Chapter 3. 3 floors down within the bowels of police headquarters, D.I. Knapp and TDC Miller stepped out of the lift and headed for the room marked pathology. Pushing through the doors, they were met by an attractive brunette sitting behind the reception desk. Karen Clay looked up as the two men approached. She gave them her usual winning smile. Miller smiled as he took in the view. White brilliant teeth, ruby red lipstick, large breasts looking to burst out of her blouse. Wonder bra girl, thought Miller as he smiled back. Clay looked across at Matt and then at Knapp. Boss is expecting you, dear Knapp. Feel free to go through, pointing towards the door, she said. Thanks, mumbled Knapp as he strode ahead. Tagging behind, Miller blew Clay a kiss and she smiled back. Home Office pathologist Sandra McLean was just enjoying the last throes of a large steaming mug of coffee as the two policemen walked into the room. She beckoned them to take a seat. Slim build, brown hair tied back in a bun, dressed in a smartly tailored trouser suit, McLean looked every inch the confident pathologist she was. Appointed by the Home Office, she operated across the Child Protective Services state. She was one of 6 pathologists the police could call upon in that area. While her usual caseload covered the same geographical area, she did on occasion find herself working nationwide. She was courteous as the two policemen each took a seat. Colin, nice to see you, she commented, and raised her eyebrow and looked across at Miller, waiting for an introduction. Miller reached across and shook her hand. DC Matt Miller, ma'am. Knapp corrected. TDC, Sandra. Trainee Detective Constable. McLean smiled and pushed a large file across at Knapp. He opened the folder and viewed the numerous sheets of typed paper and looked at the black and white photographs beneath. McLean tapped on the folder. These are our preliminary findings, boys. We brought in a forensic anthropologist overnight to work with me on this one. What we have is definitely male. Skull occipital protuberance clearly indicates this is Caucasian. Most likely no more than 23 years of age at the time of death. The telltale sign is this. She tapped on a black and white photograph. Look at the spongy bone at the end of the femur. It has a distinct lack of ossification. Knapp and Miller looked up. In layman's terms for you boys, the bone is not fully formed. It hardens and becomes ossified. Al Vic still has spongy bone in existence. This means no older than 28, but most likely early 20s. The final clue on that is this one. She taps on another photograph. The growth plate of the clavicle is incomplete. This plate should be closed at the very latest by the time the male is at 28 years of age. What you've got on this photograph is no signs of ossification, no plate closed. Bingo. Vic is early 20s at best, exclaimed McCain. Knapp acknowledged the point. Now let's have a look at the skeleton for further damage. McLean flicked through the papers, throwing a black and white photograph in front of Knapp. No signs of ante-mortem trauma, meaning the healed fractures. No signs of post-mortem trauma, meaning no damage since death. That's very interesting, actually, because ultimately there's no animal damage since the body's gone in the ground. It looks like the P.T. Bogs protected the skeleton and the remains, as best intact as possible anyway. Good, said Knapp. By now, McLean was in full flow. However, as you can see from this particular photograph, she pushed a black and white in front of the two men, we have extensive peri-mortem trauma, meaning damage on or around the time of death. Knapp and Miller stared at the photograph. Both could easily see the left leg had been broken twice below the knee and once above it, but there seemed to be massive fractures. McLean continued. The femur is not only the longest but also the strongest bone in the body. Hence, to cause this sort of trauma, the victim must have taken a hell of a beating. Couple that with lower leg breakages, it suggests he's had a brutal attack. I see damage like this from a bludgeoning of a, long, strong instrument? Something like a baseball bat. Miller nodded. Knapp took in the observation. Okay, said Knapp, tell us about the bullet wound. Yes, exclaimed McCain. This is where it gets really interesting, Colin. McLean rummaged through the file and dropped the appropriate black and white on the table. Look at this. Definite bullet wound. Bullet entered left temporal position. Measurement suggests 9mm cartridge. Partial bone damage at the rear, however, not as much as we expected. Again, our summation would be that this was a close headshot. Shot from no more than 1 or 2 feet away. Close to the head, bullet has limited damage. I think the bullet's ricocheted throughout the brain, but hasn't exited. Fractures at the rear, no clear exit wound. Victim would have suffered, however, immediate trauma, and most definitely dead within a minute. Miller stared hard at the photograph. McLean continued. However, luckily for you chaps, we managed to find the cartridge. McLean's words echoed around the room a second before Knapp realised what she'd said. What? He blurted. McLean confidently produced another black and white. Look at this little baby. Yep, we dug it up. Damaged 9mm cartridge found within the brain tissue. Snub-nosed, intact but heavily damaged. Anyway, the evidence now on its way to Nabis. They will analyse today and share the findings with us ASAP. When I know more, you'll know more. Knapp recognised the name. National Ballistics Intelligence Services. He knew they were based in Birmingham, and he knew McLean was right. They would analyse the cartridge, run tests like fire similar cartridges through plastic tanks, and review the data. They'd then search their database and determine if the bullet was linked to any existing crimes or not. And so the detection goes on. McLean pulled the final photograph from the bottom of the folder. She smiled. Well, Colin, it's your lucky day. We have even more good news. Take a look at these dental records. Knapp looked at the file. What? Well, the victim had dentistry work. Look here. Rear left upper. Molar work. Fill-ins. Content is a mixture of amalgam and mercury. This type of work was banned in the UK around 1985. Why? Because the high content of mercury basically banned it. The NHS had to stop it. Evidence was coming out of places like Japan. No signs of work on this victim since 1985. I can conclusively tell you this victim therefore had pre-1985 dental surgery, and all evidence suggests no surgery since. Either had a perfect set of teeth after that, or they were dead by 1985. McLean leaned back in her chair and summarised. So, we have a victim who's male, Caucasian, approximately 5 feet 9 inches tall, no older than 30, but highly probable less than 20. Definitely a homicide. Beaten, then shot at close range. No dental work since 1985. Suggests they may have been in the ground by 1985. If the further remains analysis shows timelines, i.e. DNA, then I'd suggest we have a victim in the ground between, 1950 and 1985. Knapp digested the comment. A cold case. For him, a case at least 30 years old. Had to be. McLean broke the silence as she pushed the now closed file across to Knapp. Keep the file, Colin. I'll send you the file electronically as well to your team, and we can bring them up to date. DNA analysis should be through later today. Alongside Nabis, missing persons, we might be able to narrow the field on this one. Knapp reflected on the news. Sandra, as always, bloody excellent work. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Colin. Just doing our job, said Sandra. The rest, as they say, is up to you guys. Knapp rose from the chair, shook her hand and grabbed the file. As he left the room, Miller followed behind him. Glad to be of assistance, shouted McLean as she returned to the comfort of her coffee mug.